Ford government has passed a controversial bill that will limit bike lanes across the province. A mother is facing a second-degree murder charge after her 4-month-old baby was found dead at a residential building in Midtown last week. And U.S. President-elect Donald Trump pledging a 25% tariff on all products from Canada and Mexico. From 299 Queen Street West, you're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24. Good evening. I'm Phil Perkins. Thanks for joining us. Our top story. The Ford government has passed a controversial bill that would see the removal of bike lanes from 3 major streets in Toronto. CP24's Melissa Duggan joins us with the details. Melissa.
Yeah, Phil, and ever since we just got a hint that this might be in our future, cycling advocates have been pushing back against this measure. But today, it going forward, the provincial government is saying that the aim of this is to fight congestion in the GTA and, of course, across the province as well. But certainly some controversial measures included in this bill, again, that we've been seeing that pushback against from those advocates, including removing separated lanes on Bloor, Yonge and University, certain stretches along those busy routes. It would also require cities to get permission from Queen's Park to install bike lanes, the ones that require removing a lane of traffic. Though cycling advocates say these changes, they are going to make roads less safe. The bill, it also is going to block cyclists or their families from suing the province if they're injured or killed after those bike lanes are removed. The legislation also set to speed up construction of priority highways like the 413 and the Bradford bypass. Now, we've been getting some feedback on this today, including from lawyer David Shellnutt, who is questioning Premier Doug Ford's arguments for removing those bike lanes. Have a listen.
Just before the amendments were leaked on Thursday, another report was leaked, that internal document to the government from members within their own party, experts within the government, to say, hey, this plan to remove bike lanes will not reduce congestion, it will make it worse. So he's selling people that he's trying to reduce congestion, but the reality is it's going to just make things way worse in the city of Toronto. And that's not even to mention the huge cost to taxpayers that's going to result from this. Forget the blood and mayhem of people getting killed on our streets, but this is going to cost a huge amount of money.
We are hearing from the Premier on social media, Doug Ford posting online, "We promise to get drivers out of gridlock by bringing sanity back to bike lane decisions, and we're getting it done." So as we mentioned, this is setting the stage for the removal of certain bike lanes along stretches of Bloor, along University, along Yonge Street, without getting the approval from the City of Toronto. Now, we have seen some opposition from the city when it comes to this plan. They drew up a report by city staff pegging the cost of ripping up those bike lanes at $48 million. The province, they are disputing that, though. And we actually heard from Premier Doug Ford not too long ago saying that that price tag is hogwash. Going to throw things back to you inside, Phil.
Yeah, hogwash. I haven't heard that word in a while. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah.
Thanks.
Could bring it back. Okay, another story we're working on. 4 people were injured in a multi-vehicle crash in Newmarket in the afternoon. It happened shortly before 3:30 at Davis Drive and Warden Avenue. York Regional Police say 4 vehicles were involved, including a dump truck. 2 people taken to hospital with serious injuries, while 2 other people suffered minor injuries. And a Toronto mother is now facing a murder charge in the death of her 4-month-old son. Police were called to an apartment building in the Roselawn and Marley Avenue area last Wednesday after the child was reported missing by his father. Officers found the infant with critical injuries. He was taken to hospital where he later died. Investigators have identified the child's mother as 30-year-old Caressa Edwards. She was initially charged with failing to provide the necessaries of life, but police say that charge has now been upgraded to second-degree murder after an autopsy was performed. Former Toronto homicide detective Mark Mendelson spoke to CP24 about the decision to upgrade the charge against the child's mother.
The autopsy sort of gave the police, certainly gave the homicide squad reasonable grounds to believe that second-degree murder was the appropriate charge as it relates to the cause and the mechanism of death. It's not first degree, so there's no suggestion of planning or deliberation by the mother in this case. But, you know, we're going to find out horrible details as we go down the road.
This is very tragic, and the loss of life of a baby or a child, who are really the most vulnerable of all victims you can ever find, is extremely difficult emotionally, especially for the father and other members of the family. The investigation itself will be very difficult because police will be interviewing the father and other family members who may have had contact with the mother who's now charged, and try and understand the circumstances of from birth to this point where the baby has been killed. And so it's very emotionally traumatic for them. And when ultimately, if this comes to a trial, this will just cause even more trauma for them.
The boy's death is the city's 79th homicide of the year. Well, today is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It also marks the start of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The Ontario NDP reminding Premier Doug Ford of his commitment to support Bill 173, which declares intimate partner violence an epidemic in the province.
There's lots of studies that have been done over the years around IPV and gender-based violence that the government could look to. They don't need to reinvent the wheel, but there's nothing stopping them from making a declaration that would immediately, as the legal team here have stated, would be a game changer in many cases just by making the declaration.
The NDP says that declaring intimate partner violence an epidemic would actually help survivors legally, including strengthening arguments made in custody cases. They say that Premier Ford committed to supporting Bill 173 back in April. And staying in Queen's Park, the Ford government missed its own target this past year for direct care for long-term care residents. The province says it has since reached that goal, but it happened outside the time frame it set out back in 2021. The law set a target of 4 hours per day of direct care from nurses and PSWs by March of next year. Officials estimate that this year there is a need for around 13,000 additional nurses and nearly 3,800 more personal support workers in Ontario. Let's talk about your commute now. A subway service on a section of Line 1 will end early this week, starting on Monday. Until Friday night, subway service between St. Clair West and King stations will end every night at 11 p.m. for track work. Shuttle buses will operate instead. Regular service will resume every morning at 6 a.m. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News, CP24. More of the city's top stories when we come back. Welcome back. Let's go to London, Ontario. Legal arguments took place in the sexual assault case of 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey team. Dylan Dubé, Michael McLeod, and Alex Formanton attended today's hearing in London. Now, they were all charged earlier this year in the alleged assault. Carter Hart and Cal Foote also facing charges, with a jury trial set to begin next April. Lawyers of the players have said that their clients plan to defend themselves against these allegations, and all 5 are expected to plead not guilty. Well, it's day 11 of a strike by 55,000 Canada Post employees, and there's no end in sight, with Christmas just about a month away now. Workers rallied outside a Canada Post facility in Scarborough around the noon hour. Members of other unions joined in. Canada Post says that negotiations with the union continued over the weekend, but progress was, quote, limited. Workers say that they are ready to go back to work during the busy holiday season if they get a fair deal.
A company like Canada Post, which runs on its own in terms of it generates its own revenue, etc., it cannot say it does not have enough money. Matter of fact, if you look at the whole, it's a company about $9 billion, right? It runs on a budget of about $9 billion, and it brings in more and more revenue. The question which has to be asked is, why has it lost revenue in the way it has over the last 4 years? We believe this is something which is deliberate. There's been no attempt to grow the business.
And Canada Post has released a statement that reads in part, quote, "We are down nearly 10 million parcels since the strike began, which will only increase as the strike continues and people look elsewhere to have their items delivered. The impacts continue to be felt across the country, hitting small businesses, charities, and remote communities the most. We remain committed to reaching new agreements at the bargaining table, and talks will continue with the support of the special mediator." More labour talks tell you about. A potential strike is looming at Canadian National Railway. Unifor says its members at CN Rail overwhelmingly voted in favour of strike action if a contract agreement isn't reached by January 1st. The union represents thousands of workers at the railroad, including car technicians and heavy-duty mechanics. It says bargaining is set to resume on Saturday and go on until December 8th. Negotiations began in September, with wages, pensions, and job security among the top issues. And around 600,000 small businesses will start receiving their federal carbon rebates this week. Well, the feds have promised to return around $2.5 billion collected from small and medium-sized businesses in carbon pricing since 2019. Small businesses had complained multiple times that they were paying a significant portion of carbon pricing collected by Ottawa, but were getting nothing back because 90% of the revenue collected was then returned in rebates to households. The amount of the rebate depends on which province a business operates in and how many workers they employ. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24. More of today's top stories when we come back. Here's some of the stories that we're following. The Ford government has passed a controversial bill that will limit bike lanes across the province. Canada Post says that they have made limited progress with the union as the ongoing strike enters its second week. We'll have a closer look at what the impact could be this holiday season. And legal arguments have started in the sexual assault case of 5 members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Hockey Team. Stay with CP24 for more on these stories, and for more details, go to cp24.com and the CP24 app. Well, a resentencing trial for Lyle and Eric Menendez, the brothers who were sentenced to life in prison for murdering their parents, has been postponed to January. The brothers appeared virtually in court today alongside their family and friends for the first time in nearly 60 years. A judge is deciding whether new evidence justifies a re-examination of their convictions. The case has been pushed to give LA's attorney time to review it.
Both made impassioned pleas with the judge to send the brothers home, and like I said, very moving. Terry testified under oath that she was very close to Jose and practically grew up with him, and Joan as well talked about Kitty and all of the good things that they've done.
The brothers have claimed that they killed their parents out of self-defense after suffering years of abuse. Their family spoke in court today in support of their release. Well, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has promised a 25% tariff on products from Canada and Mexico. In a post on social media, Trump vowed to impose a 25% tax on all products from both countries in his first day in office. Trump also said the tariffs would remain in place until the two countries clamp down on drugs, particularly fentanyl, and migrants crossing the border illegally. Experts have warned that a blanket tariff would not only shrink the Canadian economy, but would result in higher prices for goods on both sides of the border.
His numbers go up just as well as us. Look, 10%, 20%, 25%, it's politicking, right? It's not any sort of economic justification for what he's doing. He wants to try and make the border safe. He thinks that Canada is a source of insecurity, not for immigrants, but for illegal drugs coming into the country. We knew that this was going to be a mess. We saw it 4 to 8 years ago during his first presidency. I don't think there's any secret that he was looking to do maximum damage.
CTV Chief Political Correspondent Vashi Capellos has more on Trump's announcement.
I think there had been some level of optimism that Canadian efforts thus far under the Team Canada umbrella would have resonated with people close enough to Trump that they would, there would be a greater understanding of the differences between Mexico and Canada in particular. And I think the value of Canadian exports to the U.S., and I'm in particular talking about oil, right? We supply so much of the U.S.'s own supply or intake of oil. So I think there had been a certain level of optimism that at the very worst, maybe there'd be a 10% tariff, but that energy exports from Canada would be exempt from that. There's nothing about this in what you just read. There is no such thing as an exemption. We are lumped in very closely with Mexico, and he is so specific about it that he's saying it's going to happen on day one through an executive order. I can't imagine him rolling that back at this point. So then the question becomes, what does the federal government do? What does Canada do? Do they hearken back to the first iteration of Trump and the threat of, or the imposition rather, of 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel and impose counter tariffs? What does that do to our economy? It's just a real, it's a shocker to the system, and I think to the economic system as well, potentially.
And Premier Doug Ford weighing in on X, saying, quote, a 25% tariff would be devastating to workers and jobs in both Canada and the U.S. The federal government needs to take the situation at our border seriously. We need a Team Canada approach and response, and we need it now. Prime Minister Trudeau must call an urgent meeting with all premiers. Well, a senior government source telling CTV News that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with President Trump tonight, and they discussed trade and border security. The discussion is being described as good. Good. Well, airports, highways, planes, trains, automobiles in the U.S. are expected to be jam-packed during Thanksgiving week. AAA predicts nearly 80 million Americans will venture at least 80 kilometers from home between Tuesday and next Monday, most of it by car. However, travelers could be impacted by ongoing weather challenges, and those who are flying could be grounded by delays brought on by airline staffing shortages and an airport service workers' strike. Well, President Joe Biden pardoning 2 turkeys for the last time, and he talked about his time in office as it's drawing to a close.
This event marks the official start of the holiday season here in Washington. It's also my last time to speak here as your president during this season and give thanks and gratitude. So let me say to you, it's been the honor of my life. I'm forever grateful.
Their names, Peach and Blossom. 2 turkeys from Minnesota, same from the Thanksgiving table. They're named after the state flowers of Delaware, where the president hails from. They'll now go back to Minnesota to live out the rest of their lives as agricultural ambassadors. Watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24. More of today's top stories when we come back.
CHUM 104.5. Toronto's best music. The Marilyn Dennis Show. Mornings. CHUM 104.5. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app.
The final deadline in the Princess Margaret Home Lottery is just 4 days away. Win the $7.4 million grand prize, a King City show home, and $500,000. Last chance, midnight Friday. PrincessMargaretLotto.com.
Did you ever dream of seeing the wonders of the world? Breathtaking landscapes, historic ruins and treasures, incredible creatures. Look no further than the Florida Keys. You'll discover a place that's magical, colorful, and unforgettable. The Florida Keys and Key West.
Good morning. Ooh, Billy's here. Bill, great to see you. How long has it been?
Oh, like 30 minutes.
Be honest, though, you missed me.
Here's your BLT.
Well, you're not going to make me eat this alone, are you?
Oh, man, I have other customers.
That's what I love about you. You don't treat me special.
You know, I like to think I treat all my customers special.
Well, specialer. You don't treat me specialer.
Okay. Well, back to work.
I will see you soon.
I know.
The final deadline in the Princess Margaret Home Lottery is just 4 days away. Win the $7.4 million grand prize, a King City show home, and $500 grand. Last chance, midnight Friday, princessmargaretlotto.com.
Welcome back. A special sculpture commemorating the first PWHL season is on display at the Eaton Centre. Organizers say the sculpture honors a trailblazing athlete of the league's inaugural season last year. The artists, as well as PWHL stars Sarah Nurse and Emma Malte, were on hand for the unveiling. The inaugural 6 will be on display until Thursday.
I really wanted to pay tribute to what an incredible moment this is in time, and this piece was a lot of hard work to make. And I think that also is reflective with the PWHL and where they have come to today. It was a lot of hard work to get here, and I want the art to reflect that story and the base of what is the league now.
Toronto hosts Boston in the PWHL's second season opener Saturday afternoon. All right, well, a buzzer beater decided the Raptors game in Detroit tonight. Find out who scored it. Watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24. More news straight ahead. Welcome back. Well, by now, you may have heard the news about us. This marks CP24's final day of broadcasting from our studios at 299 Queen Street West. It's rare that an address becomes part of the collective lexicon of an entire city. It's more unique when it becomes a destination for people across the country and even around the world. I'm sure someone's taking a selfie in front of that van smashing through that wall right now. Now, for those of us who had the honor of calling 299 our professional home, even though some of us have slept here, whether for a few months or a few decades, this place means a lot. And we will forever be grateful. Grateful for the stories we've covered from this newsroom since 1998, and grateful for the colleagues we covered them with, in front of the camera, behind the scenes, on the streets. So thank you. But with the end comes a new chapter, one we're actually very excited about. On Tuesday, CP24 will join our colleagues from across CTV News in our new Scarborough studio facility. There, CP24 will have more chances for innovation, collaboration, storytelling, no doubt, in ways that reinforce our never-ending commitment to cover what matters most to you and your family on your TV, your phone, your computer, bringing you Toronto's top stories wherever you find us. We will always be there. Path forward is bright, lit by a legacy and ongoing dedication to you. So thank you, Toronto, for your continued trust and loyalty. And thank you, 299, for being the heartbeat for over 26 years. So for the last time, from 299 Queen Street West, you're watching Toronto's breaking news, CP24. See you in the morning.